The cold wind swept through the streets of Everett, Washington, on that fateful February morning in 1989. As dawn broke, a chilling discovery awaited the first responders called to the transitional home where Emily Wallace resided. The air was heavy with a sense of foreboding as officers cautiously entered the residence, their breath visible in the frosty air. The scene that greeted them was one of disarray and tragedy. Emily's lifeless body lay amidst the chaos, her gentle features marred by the violence that had befallen her. Signs of a struggle were evident, with furniture overturned and personal items scattered across the floor. Amidst this scene of turmoil, a knife lay ominously on the kitchen counter, its handle smudged with unresolved fingerprints, a haunting relic of the crime yet to be solved. The officers exchanged tense glances, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay before them. With no immediate evidence pointing to a clear suspect, they were left grasping at straws in a case that seemed more complex by the moment. As they began to methodically canvass the area, seeking witnesses or any unusual activities leading up to the crime, the weight of their task bore heavily on their shoulders. In the neighborhood, grief hung like a shroud over the tight-knit community. Initial interviews were met with reluctance and sorrow. Residents were hesitant to speak, their voices tinged with fear and suspicion. Yet, amidst the hushed conversations and guarded glances, one neighbor mentioned something that piqued the investigators' interest. A shadowy figure had been seen loitering near Emily's home in the days before her murder. This revelation provided a glimmer of direction. The investigators decided to delve deeper into identifying this enigmatic presence and its possible connection to Emily's death. As they pieced together fragments from reticent witnesses and reluctant neighbors, the specter of this mysterious figure grew more prominent in their minds. Their journey for answers led them to Gilmer Police Station, where they hoped to find more substantial leads. However, they were met with frustrating obstacles. Records were incomplete, and many leads seemed to circle back into dead ends. Undeterred, they continued their pursuit, determined to shed light on Emily's final days. It was here that they managed to track down Emily's social worker, a woman who had been one of her few confidants. She recalled Emily expressing anxiety about a man who seemed to be watching her, a fleeting remark that suddenly took on grave significance. The investigators listened intently as she described Emily's growing unease and how it had cast a shadow over her already challenging life. This mention of a mysterious man added a new layer to their investigation, a clue that could unravel or complicate their search for justice. With this new piece of information, their focus shifted toward deciphering who this ominous figure might be and what his intentions were. As they connected these disparate threads of fear and uncertainty, an unsettling realization settled among them. Someone had been watching Emily closely enough to instill fear in her heart, a fear that perhaps foretold her tragic demise. With night falling once more over Everett, the investigators felt an urgency pressing upon them. They stood at a crossroads, armed with fragmented truths, but still far from uncovering the whole story behind Emily Wallace's murder. In that moment of introspection and doubt, an urgent call came through. A potential witness had come forward with new information about sightings near Emily's residence just days before her death. The revelation promised to cast fresh light on their shadowy suspect. The team rushed off into the night, hope rekindling amidst uncertainty, a race against time to prevent another tragedy while chasing shadows in search of justice. The investigators raced through the night, their minds heavy with the urgency of the new lead. As they delved deeper into Emily's past, her life began to unfold like a fragmented puzzle. The community remembered her as a vibrant soul, navigating her world with a fierce determination despite the challenges posed by her disability. In a flashback to a time before her tragic end, Emily was often seen at her favorite park. It was a place of solace and quietude where she sought refuge from the chaos that occasionally infiltrated her life. On one such afternoon, she was spotted interacting with an unknown man. Witnesses recalled the man's unsettling persistence in trying to befriend her, his presence stirring unease among those who watched. This image lingered in the investigators' minds. Who was this man? And what did he want with Emily? Determined to unearth his identity, they set out to find any records or sketches that might have been made during that era. Their journey led them to the Everett Library, where they sifted through archival records in search of anything that might shed light on Emily's connections. The search was painstaking, hindered by sparse documentation and lost acquaintances. Yet amidst the yellowed papers and faded ink, they stumbled upon a handwritten note by Emily herself. It mentioned a Mark, a name that whispered of unease but gave no further clues. The name Mark resonated with an uncomfortable familiarity now that Mark Rizzo had been brought into the investigation's light. Could this note be a tenuous link to their current suspect? The investigators pondered this possibility as they continued to piece together Emily's fragmented history. To explore this connection further, they turned to police software, delving into Mark Rizzo's profile. Initially, Rizzo seemed unremarkable, a solitary figure who had lived quietly and withdrawn from any criminal spotlight. His demeanor was noted as non-threatening, a man who perhaps hid behind his own shadows. Yet, as they dug deeper, startling revelations came to light. Mark Rizzo had indeed lived near Everett around the time of Emily's disappearance. Though his name had slipped through police databases unnoticed back then, his proximity now seemed too coincidental to ignore. Confronted with this new information, the investigators found themselves at a crossroads once more. Could Mark Rizzo's unassuming nature have been the perfect facade for darker intentions? They weighed his inconspicuous presence against the mounting evidence and began to consider how all these pieces might fit together. The tension in the room was palpable as they debated their next move, aware that every decision could bring them closer or further away from justice for Emily Wallace. Just as they were about to move forward with their newfound clarity, an unexpected twist shattered their tentative progress. Another witness had come forward, a voice from Emily's past who claimed there was more to the story than anyone had realized. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team. What could this witness know that had been hidden for so long? With bated breath and renewed urgency, they prepared to delve even deeper into the shadows surrounding Emily's life and death. As night once again cloaked Everett in silence, one thing was clear. Secrets lay dormant beneath its surface, waiting to be unearthed. And in those secrets lay a path to uncovering not just Emily's story, but perhaps revealing truths that reached far beyond her untimely demise. The night air in Everett seemed thicker, pressing on the shoulders of the investigative team as they absorbed the revelations from Emily's past. A new witness had emerged, promising to unravel secrets buried for decades. The urgency of revisiting the case was palpable, driving them to the dusty, dimly lit archive room of the Everett Police Department. Inside the archive, chaos reigned. Files were stacked haphazardly, dust coating forgotten reports and witness statements from years past. Detective Larson sifted through the documents with a methodical determination. The task was overwhelming. Each file was another piece of a massive puzzle that had eluded them for too long. "Here's something," Larson announced, pulling a yellowed statement from the clutter. It was from a bus driver who had reported seeing a man matching Mark Rizzo's description near Emily's home on the night she disappeared. The statement had been overlooked in the initial investigation, buried under less promising leads. "This could be the connection we've missed," Larson mused aloud. "We need to check any surviving bus route records from that time." His partner nodded in agreement. With a new lead in hand, their next step was clear. Verify the bus driver's account and potentially tie Rizzo to the scene. Their investigation led them to a local cafe where town residents gathered, their conversations a mix of nostalgia and skepticism about old cases like Emily's. Detective Jensen joined a group of longtime locals, hoping to jog memories. "Emily's case is back in the spotlight," Jensen said, gauging their reactions. Faces turned somber. Time had dulled memories, but not completely erased them. One elderly gentleman leaned forward. "There was always talk about a creepy guy hanging around Emily's church events," he said quietly. "Never seemed to have any ties there." Jensen thanked him, noting this down as another lead to pursue. They needed to revisit church records. Perhaps this creepy figure held another clue that could bring them closer to understanding what had happened. Armed with these insights, their final stop was the State Forensic Laboratory, where they hoped technology might unlock new answers from old evidence. Inside, the sterile environment buzzed with activity. Dr. Collins greeted them with a grave expression. "The samples from 1989 are degraded," she explained, disappointment in her voice. "But not all is lost. With public interest rising and advancements in technology, we can prioritize this case for future breakthroughs." Larson felt a flicker of hope despite the setback. While they didn't have new forensic evidence in hand yet, knowing that it could soon be possible fueled their determination. As they left the lab, anticipation lingered in the air, a sense that they were on the brink of something significant. The team regrouped at headquarters, each member carrying a piece of the puzzle, overlooked witness statements, hints of forgotten men at church gatherings, and promises of future breakthroughs in DNA analysis. Just as they began piecing these elements together, an urgent call interrupted their thoughts. Another lead had emerged, a name that linked both Mark Rizzo and this mysterious church attendee to an unsolved incident years ago. The revelation sent shockwaves through the room, renewing their resolve with an intensity they hadn't felt before. With adrenaline coursing through their veins and shadows lengthening outside, they prepared to chase this new lead into uncharted territory, knowing full well that what they uncovered next could finally illuminate Emily's tragic story or plunge them deeper into its haunting mystery. The tension from the previous night lingered as Detective Larson and his team entered the sterile halls of the forensic lab. The air was heavy with anticipation. Breakthroughs in DNA technology had reignited hope for solving Emily Wallace's murder. Inside, Dr. Collins stood beside an array of complex machines whirring softly. Their task today was clear: to determine whether the degraded evidence from 1989 could yield new insights. "The samples are challenging," Dr. Collins cautioned, her voice tempered with both optimism and realism. "But advances in technology allow us to recover partial profiles that were previously inaccessible." The team watched intently as she began her analysis. Minutes stretched into hours, each one fraught with suspense. Finally, a breakthrough emerged, a partial DNA recovery that matched early suspect entries from decades past. Excitement mingled with disbelief as this new lead breathed life into their cold case files. "This changes everything," Larson remarked, determination coloring his tone. With renewed vigor, they turned their attention back to old suspect lists, scrutinizing them with fresh eyes. The discovery prompted a re-examination of historical inaccuracies and assumptions that might have clouded their judgment years ago. Their next move took them to Emily's old neighborhood in Everett, where whispers of past rumors still echoed. The community was apprehensive. Old suspicions resurfaced like ghosts haunting the present. As Larson knocked on doors, he met with reluctance, until a former neighbor finally opened up. "Mark Rizzo wasn't just quiet," she confessed hesitantly. "He had moments, outbursts that people whispered about but never confronted." This revelation was a small but critical thread, one that hinted at a darker side previously hidden beneath Rizzo's unassuming demeanor. The team pushed for a new DNA inquiry, which now promised to unravel crimes beyond Emily's murder, challenging previous conclusions and assumptions about Rizzo's involvement. Shifting their focus to Nevada, where Rizzo was arrested, the detectives sought to understand how he had evaded capture for so long. His seemingly pristine record post-1989 came under scrutiny as they uncovered noticeable gaps coinciding with regional unsolved crimes. Rizzo's kept himself hidden by adopting alternate identities, Detective Jensen revealed after poring over records from various states. This deliberate obfuscation suggested a calculated effort to remain invisible to law enforcement. The implications were profound. It meant revisiting every unsolved crime in areas where Rizzo had lived under different aliases. As they pieced together his fragmented life, the truth began to take shape. A man who had lived in shadows, slipping through the cracks of justice time and time again. Back at headquarters, This new understanding fueled a backlog examination of Rizzo's movements across state lines, feeding into eventual arrest warrants that linked him not only to Emily's case, but potentially others. As night fell once more over Everett, Larson received an urgent call. New evidence had surfaced connecting Rizzo to another unsolved crime, a detail so explosive it threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew about him. The room buzzed with adrenaline as the team prepared to chase this lead into uncharted territory. They knew they were on the brink of not only solving Emily's murder, but also bringing long overdue justice to other forgotten victims. Standing on the precipice of revelation or ruin, they realized one thing: whatever lay ahead would irrevocably change their understanding of the man behind the mask and the town that had unknowingly harbored him for so long. The shadows of Everett seemed to lengthen as the investigative team prepared for the next phase: Mark Rizzo's extradition from Clark County Jail outside Las Vegas. The legal bureaucracy was daunting, with interstate negotiations stalling what should have been a swift process. Detectives Larson and Jensen felt the weight of time pressing upon them, aware that the tension back home was escalating. Inside the stark confines of the jail, Rizzo awaited his fate with a stoic demeanor that masked any inner turmoil. The delay in his transfer only served to deepen suspicion among the team. Was this another attempt to evade justice, reminiscent of his history of slipping through legal nets? As paperwork slowly moved forward, Larson received a call confirming that DNA evidence had definitively linked Rizzo to Emily Wallace's murder. The revelation, while expected, reinforced a resolve that had long fueled their search. With arrangements finally in place, the stage was set for Rizzo's transportation back to Everett. News of his impending arrival spread quickly through the community, stirring emotions that had lain dormant for years. Old wounds resurfaced as townsfolk grappled with narratives that had festered in silence. It was a bittersweet anticipation. Justice seemed close, yet tainted by the years lost. Upon arriving at the Everett courthouse, Rizzo faced a town divided between relief and resentment. His past attempts at manipulation were now public knowledge, casting a shadow over his every move. As he stood before the courthouse steps, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some saw a man finally facing his actions. Others only saw a figure who might still evade accountability. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Evidence amassed over decades lay bare before him. Each piece meticulously examined, each accusation weighed anew. Rizzo's impassive facade cracked only momentarily when confronted with details of Emily's life and death, moments that humanized the victim beyond a cold case file. The community watched closely as preparations for a trial began in earnest. Families who had once feared closure might never come now faced a complicated reality. Justice was within reach, but fraught with reminders of past failures. The courthouse became a symbol of both hope and dread, a testament to lives upended by resurging trauma, yet united in their drive for truth. As proceedings continued, Emily's family and neighbors gathered near her former residence, a poignant reminder of what had been lost and what still might be found. There, under gray skies laden with memory, they shared stories and sought solace in each other's presence. It was an uneasy celebration of progress, marred by stark reminders of what justice delayed had cost them. The sense of community echoed in silent resolve, a collective determination to see this through not just for Emily, but for themselves as well. They understood that closure was as much about healing as it was about verdicts. It required rebuilding trust, not just in justice, but in each other. Yet amidst these gatherings lay an uncomfortable truth. Even if justice was served, scars would remain, old wounds meeting new ones as they balanced hope against history's harsh lessons. As night fell over Everett once more, Detective Larson reflected on their journey, a path marked by shadows and revelations that had tested every belief he held about justice and fate. The trial loomed ahead like a final battleground where truth would either illuminate or deepen mystery's hold on their town. In that quiet moment before dawn, he realized there were no simple resolutions. Only stories waiting to be told, and truths only partially uncovered. As he gazed at the courthouse now bathed in morning light, He pondered what would ultimately emerge from its walls: a definitive answer or yet another question that would linger long after verdicts were read.